Director Chacon, Director Gedney,
Present.
Director Grajeda, Director Hawkins,
Here.
Director Oscui,
Here.
Director Vasquez,
Present.
Director Aceituno,
Here.
President Apodaca.
Here. Director Gadney, would you please lead the invocation, and Director Aceituno, Pledge of Allegiance.
Certainly, in this first meeting of the new year, I'd like to thank the Almighty for bringing us through into this new year, and recognize we're going to have lots of challenges perhaps, but challenges are an opportunity to maybe create a better thing. So Lord, I would ask that you bless us here today and allow us to have a frank and open discussion. Amen.
Amen.
Put your right hand over your heart and repeat after me. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Public comments and presentations.
I have no speaker requests, sir. What's this? We have no public comments or any requests. I also have no items unagendized. So I guess we're at item 3.
Do I have a motion on this, or did you
No,
already?
we're just presenting.
We're on
Just
3,
presenting on
are
item
we?
3 is if you're ready for item 3, I'll start.
Yeah. Get us out of here early. No aguanto 2 horas.
Okay. Thank you for coming, directors and audience, on a Friday. I know it's an imposition, but it's something we have to do to start the year off. We have some difficult issues to confront. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the reasons, and by the way, I have to put my glasses on because I can't see without it. Okay. Purpose of today's workshop is the first thing I wanted to mention. Why are we doing it? What we're going to try and do today is quickly review the reasons for our financial situation, review the actions we've taken in the last year, define the preliminary budget shortfall. We're going to address items currently under study that we have not been able to pin down or get the answers to in the last couple of months, and then discuss and decide, there's a package of budget reductions or revenue enhancements that I have and within my authority to do. I want to go over with the board, make sure they're in concurrence. And second, there's 10 items that could either increase our revenue or decrease our costs that the board needs to take actions on. Based upon the decisions made on this, at the end of the thing, we'll be able to identify the projected shortfall, if any, in the 2019-20 budget. So that should take us to reasons why we're in this situation. We've been through this a lot in the last year, but I'll just quickly recap. We've lost 40,000 acre-feet in potable sales over the last 10 years. And that's a good thing, actually, for the community because you're getting cheaper groundwater, or they're using less water. Replenishment sales, we've averaged 20,000 acre-feet a year. They will go to a reliable number of 0. They'll still buy it, but intermittently. We've lost 600 acre-feet of recycled water sales when Rose Hill Cemetery got their direct connection.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Do we have a copy of this presentation?
It's in the,
Okay.
it's with
In
the,
here. Okay, I got it. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
okay. One of the things that we don't talk about, but the state audit, we implemented basically all of 32 recommendations that did increase the administrative burden on both our admin and our finance department, and does run up costs. We have the end of the local resource program, which has been a great boon to the district, delivered up to $1.2 million a year at times. That is partially gone now, will be totally gone for the existing program in June 30th of 2019. And then As you recall, last year, we refinanced our bonds, and we eliminated a $1.4 million peak, but that increased our costs each year by $250,000. And we have due to our downgrade in our financial performance and lack of a stable source of revenue, and that's a quote from the bonding people, they've downgraded our bonds twice in the last 4 years. So that's the background on why we're in our present financial situation. And as you recall, we've taken actions since starting last April to reduce costs. And I won't go through all of these, but I highlighted the ones that have to do with personnel reductions. And I want to emphasize when I reduce a person, it doesn't mean that the work wasn't needed or isn't. It means that additional work is picked up by people within the organization. So when we eliminated, for example, the water resource analyst left us, instead of replacing him, we shifted his duties to Chris Alvarez, picked up some, Mark Boss picked up some, the interns picked up some, Tammy did some. We've been a number of other things that were done last year. That was about a $600,000 reduction. They went to the board in September of this year in accordance with the budget message that we said. And when we knew the replenishment sales were going to be down, we cut another $1 million from the budget. Again, we eliminated that one the chief engineer position. That means we didn't have major capital programs, but there is projects and continuing work that has to be picked up by Jackie, by Roman, by Norris. So we were at this point looking at numerous detailed items. So at that time, at the end of this year, we've already cut $1.6 million out of the proposed budget in April of last year. Now, our projected revenue and costs and expenses going forward. And I took out the pass-through costs, which tend to mute the impact on this. These are the actual cost of water that comes in and out is not in this. This is our total net revenue coming in, which is about $10.5 million, and that assumes rate increases of 5% each year per our rate study master plan we did last year. And our net expenses are $10.2 million and actually drop a little bit as well. We have some operational things that kick in. Now, what we call principal there is the principal on the bonds. It's the pension requirements and the Vernon capital payment, I believe. So that's about $2 million. The capital expenditures shown there are two $600,000 ones the next 2 years. That is for replacing a pump station that is sorely needed. We've put it off for the 3 years I've been here. We have to do it or the system's going to fail. So that's the minimum that we do. When we did this, we come up with a total cash deficit in the year of $2.2 million. And I might point out that when we look at the total expenses, and if you add them together, it comes out to about 12.2 or 12.3 million, with a little under 13 million, 12.8 million, when you add all of the expenses together. Of that, over $8.5 million are fixed. In other words, there's nothing we can do about it. Those are costs that have to be paid, and I've got a table in the back if you want to look at it. I have a question that summarizes what it is, whether it's payments to retirees or the building cost or bond payments or interest payments on the bonds or the operation of the recycle system. Our discretionary funds that we're working in with these reductions is in the $4.5 million range. Any questions at this point? Now, also, and I do want to commend the directors and the staff and the retail agencies because they have all contributed ideas over the last several months of things that could be done to help solve the problem. These are some that are currently under study that could contribute, but it's just we can't have answers in a short time. I'll take a couple of minutes on these. The sublease of the Rio Hondo property, there is surplus property out there, about 2 acres out of the 4. It could be used for other things. I've asked WRD if they have a temporary or long-term need for it. Right now, they've been using some as a construction laydown. There are solar companies that offer to come in. We need to work with our lessee, which is the city of Whittier, to see what's appropriate appropriate with the lease. All of that takes time, and it can't be done in the short time we have, but we'll continue to work on that, and I think within the next 3 months, we should have some definition on what can be done with that. Director Grajeda, who has the flu, otherwise he would be here. Director Grajeda proposed that we look at a voter-approved parcel charge. I've called 3 engineering firms. The engineering part is not a problem. It's a $40,000, $50,000 study. They said the key thing is to talk to a pollster and talk to a marketing firm. So we've talked to both of those. We're putting together an estimate of what the polling would be to see if you have a chance of passing this, and we'll take that to the board. And we're also looking at what the marketing costs would be. We have someone coming who's going to give us an estimate of the marketing and the outreach and the mailing on this. I use the term of about $1 million to try and do this, and it requires a vote of the people. Timing-wise, the county of LA, I believe, is going to the ballots next November with a parcel charge at the same time, so it'd probably have to be a year after that you do it. So, but that's when we're looking at it. It just takes a while to do, and it's our new director of finance came up with the idea, can we pay off our pension debt with a taxable bond? Now, PERS is discouraging that a bit. They say it's risky. They haven't defined yet. And preliminary costs we did showed this could possibly save us $200,000 or $300,000 a year or more as pension costs escalate. But to do that, you have to have an ability to go to the market, and until our costs are stable, I don't think we are in a position to increase any indebtedness and go for bonds, but that is something that we'll be looking at over the next couple of years. Another idea that came out of the brainstorming sessions was to pay the pension debt with, to look for sponsorships or grants for the water education program. I have an expert in that field coming in this afternoon, Darcy Burke, and she's going to take a look at, meet with Mark and take a look at what can be done, how much it would cost and what it would look like to go out and get private companies to help support our school program. Our new LRP, we have a new LRP in for smaller projects we're working out right now. That's done and ready to go in. We've had a request from WRD to look at potential wheel end water, move 5,000 acre feet across the system. As anything takes a while, we have to get an agreement who's paying for what, and define exactly how much and where it is, but that could theoretically generate revenue as they move water through our system. They would compensate us for the use of it. Same thing, we've had a request to lease some of our recycled capacity. We have to look at that from a legal and operational standpoint, how much, et cetera. Both of those things are going to take 4 to 6 months to get the defined, wrapped up, and see if there's benefit to the 2 agencies. We also had a proposal to move on to sell the office building. We have an ad hoc committee of directors that we're late to have a meeting on because of illnesses of different people, but we're hoping to get a meeting on that and see if that could generate any savings to us. Again, we're looking here at cash flow savings. This would generate capital and increase the cash flow because we now have to pay for rent somewhere, but we're looking at if there's a way to make an even trade on it. So those are items currently under study that are not integrated into this analysis in any way yet. Okay, so then we get to things that require, let me make, okay. Oh, these, back one more.
Done.
Okay. These are the changes that the general manager is proposing. Now, these are things I have within my authority to do, and I propose to do unless there's any significant objection on part of the board. We're not going to fill the public information officer position, at least at this time. We are not filling our GIS intern position each time, and we're budgeting to reduce our retired annuity engineering hours by 200 in next year's budget. Those are 3 personnel things within my authority to do. Joseph and Kelsey and Mark have stepped up to pick up Priscilla's duties for now, and with the GIS intern, we're still trying to see who can, that we don't have more of a burden on Roman, and the engineering new, we're hoping that the work will slow down a bit. We looked at food expenses, and there's different ways to do lunches and that. We think we can save $4,000 a year by going from hot lunches sometimes to sandwiches and stuff like that. We have an interesting one. We've had a 3-year no-cut retainer for the ethics attorney. And the hotline will keep in place. We don't need to have the attorney on retainer. We think, based on the experience we've had in 3 years and a limited number of calls, we think we can have it referred to our existing counsel when it comes in, and unless it's something to do with them. But so that's something that the current 3-year agreement expires in February of 2019, so I'm not budgeting in the budget next year for the rest of it. That'll save $7,000 the rest of that year and about $14,000 the following year.
So with respect to that item, my understanding is, well, would you tell me how an ethics complaint would be handled?
Well, 2 ways. One is they can give it in writing to the district. We take it to the Admin Ethics Committee. We can do, or call me about it when we do it. Or the second is they can do it anonymously to the hotline, and the hotline will then go to the district's council. And we can have a similar agreement with district council that we have without a retainer, since they're already under contract with us. And they would investigate and determine how it would be handled.
So that would be our own general counsel that this board votes on. So we would basically eliminate the independence part of.
To some extent, yeah, you'd rely on the ethics of the attorney to do it, but it isn't, we have not, and this is one of the things that financially, when we did this, at the time we did it, it was warranted to spend the money because it helped to keep everybody more confidence in the system, we'll say. We've changed the structure of the board, we've changed how we deal with each other and how we work, but again, this is a board decision. Actually, I cannot budget for it, but the board wants to have it. They said we want to continue it then.
Yeah, I think it's important for us to retain, for there to be some level of independence. I think that's very important. And I think it's obvious that some of the ethics issues haven't completely been resolved. So I think it is very important for us to have the firm that is going to be working independently. And then you just never know what may arise. I think, there has been a lot of work in the area of reforming how our agency has done business, but I think it's a part of the commitment that we made to, our purveyors and the constituents to have some level of due process and independence in these.
Any comments from any of the other directors?
How many cases have been referred to the council, and let's say in the last...
The council has had 2 calls, and in both cases, the items were outside the jurisdiction of the district.
So 2 calls within what period of time?
2 years.
Okay, so let's say an average of 1 call a year.
Yeah.
That was not related to anything that we do.
Well, it was related, but it was something that the solution to the problem was outside of our district. It's a district attorney issue, not a district issue.
Got it. And then, is this a requirement spelled out by the audit?
No.
So we are not obligated to do this.
No.
And we've had 2 cases in the last 2 years that ended up in the district attorney's office, outside of our jurisdiction, basically.
So what I can do, because I think that right now, I will put this for discussion as part when we go through the budget process. So we'll make it a line item in the budget and make the board have to discuss and vote on it. So I'll take it out of GM's discretion, put it in the budget process so you can deal with it at that time. Is that...
And one last question I've got. In the last 2-year period, it's spent $7,000 per year retainer for this.
Actually, no, we spent 13. The retainer is $1,350 a month.
Okay.
For the attorney. So
what's the total cost the last 2 years for this?
About $30,000.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
$15,000 per call.
Yeah.
Have there been any... That's okay.
Okay. Yeah. No, and again, this is the issue of ethics and how we deal with each other, and that is something really requires a long-term board workshop that I know we've been reluctant to do, but I do think we have to have some time.
And an independent reviewing body.
Yeah.
Let me just add something. we are talking about reducing district meeting food expenses and talking about cutting into our educational programs and so forth. We just summarized what transpired over the course of 2 years and how much the expense was. This is $30,000. That's a lot of money. And I understand independence, having an independent review of any particular cases that may arise, but I also feel that either we trust our attorneys or we don't. The hotline is important, so everyone that has an issue can feel comfortable enough to go through the hotline and lodge a complaint. But I much more comfortable that the issue gets referred to our attorneys. It goes before, whatever goes before the attorney for his review or her review, then ends up in the ethics subcommittee anyways. And if the ethics subcommittee decides that beyond the review of our attorney there is a independent review that is required, then at that time we can make that decision as a body.
Yeah, like I said, I will tee this up for discussion as part of the budget, put it back in the budget process, so something all the directors can weigh in at that time.
Well, and my understanding of this issue is that our attorney will, if our attorney conducts the investigation into whatever complaint is lodged, our attorney's going to bill us for it. And so we're going to pay for this investigation in one way or another.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I mean, because what I've seen is that, and I haven't had a chance to review the legal bills, and I need to get in here and start reviewing the legal bills. I will before the next board meeting, but it appears as though there's enough work for the attorneys to bill up to $25,000 a month, so that's pretty much a flat rate. And anything that comes in addition to whatever service they provide at the rate of $25,000 is also billed to the Central Basin. So
yeah, that's not quite how the bill works. We have an estimate of $25,000. The board would like to keep it, but they work on an hourly basis, not on a retainer, whereas this is a fixed retainer. We could also look, when we have this discussion at another time, at changing the contract to maybe we can get,
Yeah. Well, my point is that, we are going to spend additional monies anyway on the investigation. So really the issue is going to be, is our own general counsel going to deal with the issue, or are we going to have an independent
and that's a debate, again, another time and place. I think it'd be appropriate for the board to have that discussion. Okay. There are some things that I looked at that we rejected. And again, by the way, every once in a while when you walk around the office, you see something that just puts a smile on your face. And we have a young man who is an intern with us, Arturo. He's sitting in Lonnie's office. So here's this young man, 20 years old, in the chief engineer's office. And on his bulletin board, he has 3 quotes. One from John F. Kennedy, I think one was from Thomas Edison, and the third one from Dr. Seuss. And the Dr. Seuss one is about think left and think right and think up and think down. Oh, how wonderful we think when we work at it, so to speak. I don't have the quote right. But if you have a chance, go up and look at it, because what we did, we got together as a staff and brainstormed and came up with ideas of any type that would save money in the district. I mean, one of the things we looked at was eliminating the afternoon security guard. It would save, theoretically, $20,000 a year. Unfortunately, the neighborhood we live in, the type of area it is next to the freeway, the homeless problem in the area, it's not safe, particularly for people who work late. And we don't allow people to work late here after the security guard leaves. So that was a safety issue. We looked at canceling the Edison lot lease. We thought their lot lease was expensive, but the period of time in which we need the parking is too frequent with the events that we have here, and requiring people to park across the street at that time, and employees, creates an unsafe situation where you've got to cross a very busy street. And so that, again, I think it's not a safe situation. We looked at moving the caucus. We do 10 caucuses a year. It is a certain expense. We looked at moving to the morning or quarterly, because if it was in the morning, and some agencies do a caucus in the morning, you could be lower cost theoretically for breakfast. If you did them quarterly, you'd have lower for the frequency. looking at the composition, what we've gotten accomplished with the caucuses, the number of people who come, and the caliber of the speakers and the variety of the attendees, it looked to me like it's beneficial to the community. We get directors and we get citizens and we get aides to elected officials in, and we were able to get good water information out to them. Also looked at staff pay cuts. Our staff is paid in the lower quartile. Already, we have made, if you look at the cuts that have been made in the last couple of years, in the last year on this, on the backs of the employees, they forego their raise pool for the year. The added the training cuts and the other cuts, almost $200,000 worth of cuts came at the expense of the employees at an increased workload, so I didn't believe it was warranted. So I've rejected those under my limited discretion.
So you said you've rejected those under limited discretion?
Yeah, unless the board wants to take it up and discuss it, these are things I've looked at and said they're not worth, they don't seem appropriate for the situation we're in.
Okay. So that means, I know that you had proposed some cuts to benefits, staff benefits?
But they're coming up in the...
Okay, so
they're
we
coming
are
up
going
in
to
here.
do...
This was strictly wage cuts.
The staff will get hit,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. These are what actions that require board actions. There's 10 of these. I suggest the process, because we're going to get through this in a timely manner, is that I'll present it, ask me any questions that you have. If any director wants to make a comment, do one comment, and then call for the question and have a vote. The first one is we have two metropolitan charges that we pass through, a readiness to serve and a capacity charge. These are fixed annual charges that are passed through. As part of the pass-through, we have calculations we have to do, and our method of passing through is different than MET. And we've done that to minimize the cost to the agencies and to be equitable. But in doing that, we incur costs. We thought a 5% surcharge on the amount of these charges would compensate for the cost. The total for both of those charges would be $71,000. That increased revenue. Again, other agencies pass these through in a way that they actually make money on them in terms of the rates themselves. So this would mean that basically an agency that was getting an RTS charge of $100,000 would now get one for $105,000. It would be a 5% surcharge on anybody's bill on it. Any comments by the board? This would generate $71,000 a year. Recommended action is that we implement this 5% charge. The board could choose another, or they could maintain the current practice. So it's whatever your pleasure is. Well, you have to say something, folks. I mean, I know it's not pleasant, but someone has to either maintain the current practice or implement the 5% handling fee.
Well, Kevin, this is still an adjustment in fee.
Yes.
And we are going to do a fee study.
Yes.
So I feel more comfortable to have the fee study in front of me as a whole, and then be able to decide to break it down to components like this.
Again, our fees that we have right now, that we adopted our water rates, our recycled water rate, etc., standby charge, our per meter charge. This would do the same as with the proposed retail meter. This would put a different charge on the books. It'll still be part of the rate study. If I don't have it approved, I don't have it in the array of rates that's put on it. That's all. But again, it's up to your pleasure.
I think I would have to agree with Director Ascui. I'd like to see the rate study before, to be honest with you, before we even consider any of what's going to be proposed today. I'd like to see the whole picture, and then based on that, look at the other stuff.
Director, again, I think we're confusing two issues. The rate study that we're doing is for the implementation of, for example, we did a rate increase last year and did a rate study. It was not a Prop 26 study. It simply set our rates. We could also set our rates without a study. The reason I'm proposing a study this time is that we'll have the new charge they're doing. And when you put that in the mix, we have to then achieve some Prop 26 equity. There were no questions on that in our current rates the way they're implemented. We increase our water rate, we increase our recycled water rate. Those weren't debatable when we put the new charge in. So I can see if you want to hold this off and put it part of the new charge, but the rest of what we're doing today, I know it would be nice to kick everything down the road, but there's a timing issue here in terms of getting the budget done. So, but again, if the idea is to maintain the current practice or bring it back after the rate study, that's fine.
Kevin, I'm confused on this thing, because not this here, the whole package that you're putting together here. We're seeing all these different cuts that we've already taken place. That's fine. We're seeing the cuts that should be taken or we need to vote on, and then there's also the area where we want to raise different rates.
Yeah.
I'd like to see some side by side to see what we've done, what we can do, and then options so that we can see how this all lines up with each other, and I don't see that in this particular package.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that's exactly what I tried to do, because I agree with the logic of it. I tried to show you what we've cut already.
Right.
In
And I
the two
understand
cuts.
that part. But I'd also like to see, okay, we've done these cuts. These are what we are proposing as far as cuts, based on whether we get the increase or not, and I don't see any of that, so I'm not sure what I'm actually, to me, this is very small, but how does that fit into this whole package that we're talking about?
Yeah, I guess the only way I can put it is we have a deficit projected in the analysis we did of approximately $2 million. We've gone through and looked at potential cuts that the board could make or revenue increases that they could make, which would be fairly non-controversial, or to some extent controversial, and see how much we can do to minimize that practice. Because our fixed charges are $8.5 million out of $12.8 million, there's no way to cut the $2 million out of that board. There's simply no way to do it and still be left with a district that functions. So what we're trying to do here is put together an array of options that, based on what you vote at the end of the thing, we can say the board has reduced costs by, let's just pick a number, between the GM and the board, the reduced cost by $500,000. That means the deficit's gone from about $2 million to $1.5 million. Then when we go to discuss the need for the charge, the retail meter charge, that's what's left with. Now at the end of this, we're going to have a summary sheet.
So we'll only have, if these cuts go through, then we'll only have $1 million deficit.
No, that's not what I said. If the board adopted everything that I have on here, we'd probably still have a $1.3 million, $1.5 million deficit. We don't have cuts on here enough to solve the whole problem. I simply can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
But see, Kevin, just what you just said there, forget about what you're talking about here. We as directors, we have to justify either why we did it or why we didn't do it, and I don't see that comparison for me to either brag about what we did or complain about what we did, because I don't see that comparison. Granted, we can say that we've cut, but we're also going to say that we're going to raise, and I want to see how that justifies what we need to do, because like you said, we've got this supposedly, let's say $3 million. Are we going to have to raise it by $3 million, or is there more to cut so that we only have to raise it by $2 million? And see, but the directors, I don't see that I can justify that to my people to say, here's why I did that. Whether you like it or not, I don't have that breakdown. So I would like to see charts, this is what we cut, this is what, so that we can see what we're talking about.
And excuse me, Kevin, but I agree with Director Hawkins. I could see if this was going to bring us out of the red, but it's not.
No.
So I actually thought this was going to put us in a better situation. And, so I was kind of leaning towards that way, but it's not going to put us, it's just going to probably get people upset and, keep us in the same situation. So I don't.
Well, again, these are actions that I can't go and do a budget that has a dozen moving pieces. This is to provide the context into which I can prepare a budget for you that meets those goals. These are 10 items that are on here that require board action. And so each one of them is a separate moving piece. Now, if we go through here and you approve this, okay, I have 71,000 more in revenue I do in the budget, and you make some changes in benefits, or you change the school program, that defines where we are to do a budget. Then I still have to come to you with a budget, and that's where you get the information you want. The budget is modified by the 10 actions that you'll take today. It will modify the budget, and then I'll give you the budget and options and a rate study at that time. But I can't have I can't give you a budget that is one way if you implement a handling fee, another way if you don't, one way if you have a change in benefits or change in the school program. You simply don't have enough definition. These are ideas that you've come up with as directors, that we've come up with as staff, or the member agencies have come up with, and require board action.
Now, my understanding is that even if these cuts are made, as has already been mentioned, we're still not going to solve the problem, and you're going to ask us to implement this charge, right? This connection fee. Is that accurate?
That's totally correct.
Okay.
And the only thing I'm trying to do is
Mr. President, I
minimize.
would just say, and Kevin, I want to thank you for putting this list of 10 out here, because we got to get everything out in front of us. And this is one of 10 things just today that we're going to be talking about. And, kind of to get us off the ball, so to speak, based upon what I've heard from Director Hawkins and Aceituno and Ascuri, I would move that we, for this particular action at this time, go with item 3, maintain current practice. It's one of a list of things that we can take a look at. What I'd like to do is talk to the utilities and thereby indirectly our customers as to what is the impact of doing this. But I'm glad we put this on, this item to be discussed. But I would move we maintain current practice for this particular item and keep pushing our way through the list.
Great. Is there a second to that?
I'll second that. So, do you want to call it?
Director Chacon?
Yes.
Director Gedney?
Yes.
Director Hawkins?
Yes.
Director Oscui?
Yes.
Director Vasquez?
Yes?
Director Aceituno?
Yes.
President Apodaca?
Yes.
Okay, here's an easy one, directors. We'll go back a one. This is one that is strictly a way we can make a little money. We have surplus, because of the reduction in staff, we have surplus office space upstairs. We could then accommodate directors or visiting dignitaries, et cetera, or consultants, auditors when they come in upstairs. So we'd have 4 offices downstairs that we could theoretically lease out. Based on the market, we estimate we get gross revenue at $10,000 to $15,000 a year. And after paying for leasing company fees, we think net revenue of $8,500 is reasonable. We're willing to do this.
Does this one require a board? This sounds like this is staff and day-to-day operation that we would normally get involved in.
I don't think I have the authority to execute a lease for
I'll
our
move to
space.
support this one.
Okay. Do we have a second? Let's go.
I'll second the motion.
Yeah, are we going to be required to ask them for insurance?
Absolutely.
We don't have an elevator that operates.
We will.
These people get into
Yeah.
this elevator, they get stuck, something happens. I mean,
Well, no, Director, there's good points. Now, this is the downstairs space, so they won't need the elevator. And we will require them to be insured and, all of the normal things that you do in a tenant lessee
This is a
relationship.
potential solution that you're suggesting with a potential net 8,500
Yeah.
for lower floor offices.
Yeah,
If
just
you do
lower
it,
floor.
great. If you can't, we understand.
Yeah.
So, call for the vote. Director Chacon?
I'm going to abstain on that one.
Director Gedney?
Yes.
Director Hawkins?
Yes.
Director Oscui?
Yes.
Director Vasquez?
no?
Director Aceituno?
Yes.
President Apodaca?
Yes.
Motion passes for item number 1.
Okay. It's actually item number 2, but
2. Partially leasing? Is it item number 1 or 2?
option 1 of item 2. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, the second one is one that we discussed in Finance Committee yesterday. It's to put money in the Los Angeles County investment. It's already set to go to the board. but there's a memorandum. It would generate an additional $8,000 a year. There doesn't appear to be any risk. There's billions of dollars, $20 billion plus in that fund already. We give up a little bit in liquidity and flexibility, but we get a significant greater return. The first year, we estimate the cost would be, the revenue generated would be about $8,000 again.
I move this, as was discussed in detail, thanks to Andrew's presentation. Was it yesterday or the day before? Yesterday.
And I'll second.
Director Chacon?
Yes.
Director Gedney?
Yes.
Director Hawkins?
Yes.
Director Oscui?
Yes.
Director Vasquez?
Yes?
Director Aceituno?
Yes.
President Apodaca?
Yes.
Okay. The next item is something the board had considered before, but I felt obligated to bring it back because of comments made by directors. That's our bottled water program. We have had a bottled water program for many years. The bottled water has our name on it. We limit 10 cases per event. I was impressed. We did 247 events last year, gave out about 2,200 cases of bottled water, about 50,000 bottles, and the total cost was $15,000. There's an additional cost for staff time, but it's not with those, but it came out to about a week and a half or 2 weeks, so it's not significant. So this is one, if there's any questions about it, the options are we can either eliminate the bottled water program, reduce it to 5 cases, or maintain status quo. Eliminating it saves $15,000. Going to 5 cases could theoretically save $7,500. And status quo is just that.
Yeah, see, I'm against this. When we put this bottle program in several years ago, what we did is we decided we wasn't going to do a lot of outreach. We weren't going to do advertising. We weren't going to do all this other stuff. We would strictly, because we're a water agency, do bottled water with our name on it. That way we would go to the cities and we would make sure that they had our bottled water and that we were the water people for them. If we're going to do away with this, I mean, I think we're shooting ourselves in the foot, and I think it's like penny wise and pound foolish on what we're getting out of this. So I would be against it.
So with that being said, I'd like to make a motion to maintain the status quo on this particular item.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any other discussions?
Could you repeat the motion, please? So are we on item 1 or item 2 then?
Number 3.
With respect to eliminate the bottled water program, the motion was to maintain the status quo.
Okay. Let me just add something. I understand the vote is already taken. These bottled waters were novelties 10, 15 years ago when not everyone was doing it. You do them at an event, they'll see your brand, then they see another 10 and it gets confused. It's not a novelty anymore. It doesn't do the PR that it used to do 10, 15 years ago. Every time that we're talking about cutting costs and we're talking about reduction to staff benefits and salaries, reduced hours, my preference is to take it out. I understand, a lot of people are attached to it, but I'd much rather take this out, save the money rather than reducing the benefits to our employees. And this is not forever cutting it out. We are talking about dire needs and dire actions that needs to be taken as a result of that. That doesn't mean that we're going to eliminate this forever. When we get to a point that we can afford to do it again, we'll do it again. I just needed to say that. I understand what the vote is.
Director Chacon? Who seconded it?
Yes.
Director Gedney?
No.
Director Hawkins?
Yes.
Director Oscui?
No.
Director Vasquez?
Yes?
Director Aceituno?
Yes.
President Apodaca?
Yes.
Now, this is another easy one. All directors currently get a $7,000 per year travel allowance. It was $5,000, and I had recommended a couple of years ago that we increase it. This included attendance at approved conferences, the Aqua Conference, California's, the contract cities, or the independent cities, urban water, water reuse. They're all technical, related to the functions of the district. The theoretical cost, if 8 directors use the travel, would be $56,000. Not all directors use it, so our budget number last year was $48,000. We reduced the budget as part of the budget reduction this year to $24,000. The proposal at this time is to cut the travel allowance in half to $3,500, with the caveat that the general manager be authorized in consultation with the board president to approve additional travel if deemed in the best interest of the district. And why I put that in is that we had a case a couple of years ago where we had to go up to Aqua JPIA to a couple of meetings, and we needed a director to go with us. It wasn't when they were normally chosen to go, but they shouldn't be penalized for doing things that the district needs a representation at. So so that flexibility helps there. So the proposal is to cut this in half. The savings would be $28,000.
Mr. President, if I may, travel expenses, again, are part of doing normal business, but we're not doing normal business right now. We are in an emergency mode, if I can call it that. I understand sometimes, like the meeting that you mentioned, Aqua JPIA, there was a need for doing that, travel and absorb the expenses. My proposal is to, at least for 1 year, to eliminate travel expenses and look at it case by case. And we'll leave it up to you. If you come and you decide that there is a requirement for or a number of board members to accompany you or on their own to travel for a particular mission, for a particular goal that needs to be achieved, they can come before the board and seek funding approval and go from there.
If I might comment on that, Director, the thing that I don't want to have is have uneducated directors. In the water industry, the policy issues tend to
Kevin, I
move very
understand
fast.
that, but I don't think 1 year, if we are here, we can
Yeah, I know.
for 1 year, no one is going to get educated enough or uneducated enough to promote or not be able to promote the requirements of the district. We're talking about imposing a fee on a meter charge, and I want to be able, in good conscience, to go before them if we have to do that, at least to the people that I present, which are the cities, and say, look, we cut all the costs that we potentially could, but we couldn't still make it. And we know that we wouldn't be able to make it. But I've got to be able to tell them we did everything that we could, and that's why we're here before you're asking for more money.
Okay, I understand.
I want to make a comment about this issue. When I first got on this board 5 years ago, we reviewed a lot of contracts, unnecessary contracts that were cut. We reduced our spending for legal bills, for our legal services. We eliminated our federal lobbyists, which was costing us about, I think it was like $300,000 a year. We eliminated our state lobbyists. And we've been able to get by with a little bit of help. We also canceled a very costly engineering contract that we had. And so we've done a lot of cuts. We also put a freeze on the stipends for the directors. The directors have not increased the stipends since that time. We also, for the first time in Central Basin's history, we put a cap on the amount of money that was designated for attending conferences to directors. And I think at that time it was either $7,000 or $10,000, something that no other agency comparable to Central Basin has done in the region. So I strongly believe that and I don't use my travel budget. In full disclosure, I think last year was in the entire time that I've been here, was the first year that I used it. Here at Central Basin, I usually go to conferences with the Met. But I strongly believe that each of the directors that are here, and I know there are other directors that don't use their travel allowance either, but I think that the directors have an obligation to attend conferences. That's where the meetings are held. That's where we find out about new projects, new ideas. That's where we get briefed also on legislation. And I believe that that's an important role for all directors. So the status quo is what, 7,000, 7,500?
7,000.
Okay, so I would like to make a motion to maintain the status quo.
I'll second that.
Kevin, I have a question about this. How much did we spend last year total on this for all directors attending all conferences? What was the final number?
Do you remember, about 20 some odd?
In my head.
Yeah, about 25,000.
About 25,000.
No.
So
Less than that?
even with item number
more?
one,
I'm sorry.
we would have
more.
sailed under that bridge, right? We wouldn't have had a problem.
Yeah,
Because
I mean-
we spent 25 and rather than maintain the status quo then, since we already met the budget, item one would put us in pretty good shape.
You have to understand, the difference is last year's budget, we did not have 8 directors. That we do now, we had 5. So the cost comparisons are somewhat different.
But even with 8 directors,
Yeah.
we were under item one proposal, cost-wise.
Like you were greater, we just,
I believe it's greater than that.
Maggie believes it's greater than that. She has a better handle on it. But,
Okay. All right.
But I know we tried in the budget cuts that we did in September, we reduced it in this year's budget from 48 to 24 with the proviso that the GM could have authority if someone needed it. So right now, we've had a proposal for the status quo with the second, I guess. Did we not get a second to Director Eskewi's proposal?
So what we had first was Director Ascui, a 1-year, eliminate travel and look at a case-by-case basis.
And
That
there
was
was-
Director Ascui. There was no second on that. Then I have Director Vasquez to maintain the status quo, and it was seconded by Director Chacon.
Correct.
So procedurally, do we go to a vote on this, or can we have modifications to it?
Go on a
Go to
vote
a vote.
for the,
Director Scui's motion was not seconded, so
You go for Director Vasquez.
Vasquez's motion was a substitute motion,
yes,
technically, which was seconded. That's the one that would be voted on.
yes. Call for the vote.
Yes.
Director Chacon,
Yes.
Director Gedney,
No.
Director Hawkins,
Yes.
Director Ascui,
No.
Director Vasquez,
Yes?
Director Aceituno,
Yes.
President Apodaca.
Yes. And that motion was for $7,000?
Status quo.
That's what-
Maintain status quo.
What is the status quo?
The status quo.
Is it 7?
Yeah, we had cut
Okay.
the budget pool this year.
Right.
But the law, what's on the books in the admin code is
It's
7.
Yeah.
Okay.
And let's keep in mind, not all of us use it. Like I said, it's probably
We'll
under
budget for,
35.
we'll talk to the directors, we'll budget for at least 48, but maybe less than that, the maximum will be 48. Okay, water education program. We've had a water education program in this district for over 20 years. Right now, we have 9 programs. It's serving 17 school districts and almost 300 schools. Last year, we did 28,000 students, and over the years, we've actually done 3,331, almost hundreds of thousands of students, let's put it that way, 300,000 students. Our outside cost, because this is done primarily, unlike other people that have staff doing it full-time, our outside teaching consultants is 150. We cut this, and we're currently investigating in the feasibility of corporate contributions to supplement the program. Any questions about the program?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Out of the school districts that we currently service, can you tell us what school district has probably benefited the most out of our program? Do we know that?
It's Mike. Do we have that number? We'll go find it, but my gut feel it's Lakewood, Downey, or Norwalk, because I just see them in the most.
Well, a few years ago, we reviewed this as well, and and we didn't vote on it to accept it, was that they participate more. We put up a certain amount, and if they want the program, then they had to add a certain amount to it. And we didn't do it the last time, so I don't know if it's viable or if that's something that we could work with this time.
I know at the time that it was talked about in the past, the school funding had been cut significantly during the recession, and the levels had not come back up where they could match this. I mean, if we don't do this program, it doesn't get done. And it is a water education. Now, the idea of feasibility corporate contributions, we don't know whether, we're still looking at that, and probably by the time we're done with the budget, we'll have a feel of whether they can do something. But for now, this year, we cut the program in half to $75,000.
doing education or extending education to school-age kids is always a noble idea. It doesn't matter who does it. It's a nice thing to do. It's a good thing to do. But again, when you are dealing with an emergency, you can't have all the niceties that you used to be able to afford to have. You simply have to make choices. Now, the $2 million projected deficit that you indicated, Kevin, does that include in that calculation, does that include the potential issue that we have with a letter of credit that is looming sometime in February? That if that happens, as a result of that, the financial hit that we're going to take, is that included in that $2 million or not?
No,
Right?
okay.
So potentially we are going to be looking at staring at a bigger number, correct?
Yeah, it could be up by another $100,000 for each.
That's just one item.
Yeah.
What about our bond rating if it goes down?
That's another $100,000.
That's another 100,000. So I'm just saying that because we need to keep in perspective that, ladies and gentlemen, these are unusual times. We have to make unusual decisions. And here we are not being able to come to consensus to let go of a travel budget when we are talking about perhaps this district being in very, very dire financial needs in less than 6 months.
Mr. President, as much as we use this, and as my colleague said, it is a noble program to pursue this and do this. I would move that we eliminate for this upcoming budget the water education program because that's a savings of $150,000.
I'll second that.
Director Chacon?
I vote that we leave it the same.
That's a no vote, I guess.
Is that a no?
Maintain status quo, number 3.
Is that a substitute motion or?
Oh, I didn't even know they made a
Yeah, there was
motion.
a motion and a second.
Okay, then that's a no.
Director Gedney?
Yes.
Director Hawkins?
No.
Director Oscui?
Yes.
Director Vasquez?
No?
Director Aceituno?
No.
Director Apodaca?
No.
I'd like to make a substitute motion, number 3, item 3.
Well, I don't think you need to with that voted down.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Say
I
the
mean,
same.
unless you want to make a substitute motion for number 1.
No, I'll leave it number 3.
Kevin, one of the things that I want to make sure that I understand is even if these cuts are made, you're going to ask us for some revenue enhancement,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
And what I'm trying to do is minimize the impact of that revenue enhancement on the folks
Okay.
by putting up items that I believe that are not cutting the core of the district away.
Yeah, because in our discussions, both with you and with the finance director, one of the things that I had asked was what the number is for the connection fee. What is the number for us to be able to sustain the services that we have now without cutting, the education programs, without cutting employee benefits, without cutting all of that? What is that magic number?
And I believe the number we said, if you look at the $2.2 million roughly deficit, that number comes out to be a little over $7.
Okay. A little over
Per region,
$7.
yeah.
Okay.
And that shows up.
And if these cuts are made, what will that number be?
It could be, if we adopted everything proposed, it could be as low as $5. Now, that doesn't sound like much, you're talking dollars, but in the impact to an agency with 10,000 connections, it's a $20,000 difference. 7,000 versus, 70,000 versus 50,000. It's a significant difference in their
Actually, the
budget.
impact on agency that is not paying anything right now will be $70,000. Right?
Yeah.
And typically a 10,000 connection agency, I'm just guessing that depends on how they get their water, but their budget should be in the range of about $8 million to $9 million. And that is going to be a big hit for them.
In terms of their discretionary at the end, yes.
Right?
Are the purveyors willing to come to the table to support a 5, that charge at 5?
I don't know. I know that the purveyors last year were extremely gracious. We got no opposition to a 25% rate increase. Not that they liked it. Nobody likes a rate increase, but they supported us. There was no organized opposition of any type, and one of the folks spoke in favor of it. And so I can't guess how they do. I know that any hit to them is different.
Some of the purveyors here, so we
I would
can...
not characterize the sense that I've gotten from the agencies that they would be generous in this regard. And I've gotten the sense from those agencies that some of the things we've talked about, minor as they are today, they would continue to not be generous in taking a look at, where we're going with maintaining some of these programs, as difficult as that is.
Right.
So I would not characterize their response as being generous in this. I would not see them in, taking this forward, because it's an additional hit to their customers.
At any
They
rate...
don't see a benefit to it.
Right. So at any rate, so the purveyors wouldn't be open to supporting any rate charge, whether it's $5 or whether it's $7? Is that accurate? Or?
I would characterize it because I've talked to many of them.
Well, I would prefer to hear from their representatives.
The agencies that I've talked to have many, many questions about our budget.
Right.
And what they have said is, given where we are, they cannot support that per meter connection charge based upon our current spending and some of the talking about today. Now, we're not done yet today. We're going to have a board meeting coming up, but I would not use the word generous that the general manager has used and how they're going to take a look at it.
I used the term generous for last time.
Yes.
I was very clear about that. The ones I've talked to now, I would say if I was taking a vote right now, it's 38-2. I've had 2 people say that one is a gentleman has one connection. And
So we'll pay $7.
Yeah, he'll pay $6 or $7. He said, okay, you can buy me lunch to make up.
38-2 that would? So it's 38-2 that would?
Yeah,
That
but
won't?
that would vote. They do not support it.
Yeah, because, that's for me, that's something that I'm certainly taking into consideration as these decisions to cut all of our programs and to cut our employee benefits is... if the purveyors are willing, to come to the table and negotiate in good faith an amount that would gain their support, then maybe I would consider, some of the cuts. But I'm not sure that continuing to cut our programs and services is going to get us the support from the purveyor community.
The notion that I got in speaking with the purveyors that I represent was exactly what Director Gedney mentioned, and I spoke to them the last time. I spoke to them, and a couple of them yesterday, which is, forgive me for saying this, we don't trust the budget. We have to see what you folks are doing. You are not making the cuts that you can make. Without that, we won't be supporting anything. So they want this district to show them, without any ambiguity, without any gray areas, that we have done everything that we possibly could have done in order to reduce our costs. And then they will be ready to consider something. But without that...
consider.
Yeah. But without that, they're not even open to entertaining the idea that we have to put a fixed charge.
Yeah, and I understand, the position of the purveyors, and I'm really glad that we're having this, open, honest, transparent, discussion. I really believe that we have reached a point where now we have to decide what services we feel we want to deliver to our residents. And the purveyors may not agree with us having a federal lobbyist, with us hiring a state lobbyist, with us having an education program, with us having a bottled water program. I understand that, and that's why all have a seat at the table here because you can express those concerns now, in a public, open way, and you can also express your support or lack thereof as you vote.
Director, let's make it clear. The way you stated it implies that we do have a federal lobbyist or a state lobbyist.
Well, no, we don't.
We don't have.
We don't, right.
One of those.
Right, and so...
Nor is there any proposal to add them in our budget
Exactly.
at this time.
There's none, right? There's absolutely none. And we've cut, and again, I'm going back to, I'm going to circle around to remind the purveyor community that there have been a significant amount of cuts. Again, we cut our federal lobbyists, we cut our state lobbyists, we cut the engineering contract that had been here for many years. We froze the stipend for directors. We put a limit on the amount of conferences that board members can attend, and I really believe that we have done as much cutting as possible. And unfortunately, you guys were not here at that time, but I find it very necessary to bring that to the table and to share that information with you, because I don't believe that we're getting the credit that we have, that we should get from the purveyors for all of the changes that we have accomplished here. Our agency, our employees, for the past 4 years have worked on a state audit. They've worked through so many different issues in the area of cuts and in their own, they didn't get a raise this year. So I just really feel that, this whole issue, we should talk to the purveyors and about these cuts. Personally, at this point, I can't support some of these cuts because I believe we have done enough cutting, and we still have a responsibility to continue to provide services to our constituents.
I appreciate what Director Vasquez has said. All I would do is just point out that throughout today's discussion, and this has been brought forward by all of the directors, from Director Hawkins all the way across the board to Director Ascui and myself. I just want to make this observation again and clarify it. We are in unique, extraordinary, and very difficult, tough times. We're really facing a heck of a challenger. And I think, I was glad what Director Hawkins said was, we need to get more, whether it's bar charts or data or goodness gracious, whatever that might be, we need to get that out to our purveyors. And I would use the word purveyors and extend that down to my customers, our customers who pay into this program. That's who's paying for this program, the bulk of it. The people who pay the water bills, and then they pay that up, and they're paying for this program. We're in extraordinary times. We have asked for and considered in this 10-part argument, and we're not done yet. We have asked for some cuts to be made on a 1-year, maybe a 2-year basis, and we're going through a transparent process to consider all of those cuts. I would even go beyond, Kevin, and you mentioned a 38 to 2 score or whatever that was in terms of purveyors. One thing that's not on this, and we have not considered it, but I don't think we're done yet, is the very difficult and unpopular area of employee cuts, possible furloughs, things that this board has talked about in earlier discussions.
And with all due discretion, we have talked about an earlier thing. We've made cuts. We've cut 15% of our staff, and we cannot cut additional without cutting programs. And you're unwilling to cut programs. We already have an increased burden. Cutting staff to have a district that can't function doesn't make any sense to me.
And I understand that perspective and kind of how you're bringing that to us. But I think those are some, to be fully transparent, because we're talking about that now, those are some of the things that that various utilities have talked about in terms of do we need to go and consider some of these very draconian types of things in getting us back into a better financial shape. And so what we've got in these 10 are some preliminary things, and I think we've had some pretty transparent discussions and some actions now that we're not willing to consider. The very unpopular cutting the water education program. By my math, $150,000 is 10% of that $1.5 million deficit, without the issue of the other deficits we're facing come February. So I just want to make that observation. I appreciate the discussion. I'm glad we're having the discussion. But optics mean a lot. And the optics are, we're going to keep two of the things on here that I've had feedback from a number of purveyors on. So that just want to make that observation.
And I
Yeah,
do,
my understanding is though that by making these cuts, we're still not going to get out of the financial
Director, no,
situation that we're in, right?
if I could cut
gonna
my
be
way out
asked
of it,
to
I
make
would.
an increase,
But
right.
the increase, we're trying to minimize the increase. We're transferring these costs to others. We're requesting money to be paid in from others. We have a moral and ethical obligation to minimize those impacts by actions we can take ourselves.
And we have.
I keep thinking of the old saying about Nero fiddles while Rome burns, and we're unwilling to take the slightest small hits personally, or a program like this that is great to have, but if we can skip it for a year or two, we can still survive. The pyramid effect, we need to have a balanced cash flow situation in this district. We have to do that.
Yeah, and I
it has to be a
understand that.
combination of cuts and increased revenue. And everything that I proposed here, I was hoping to run the table and get a unanimous vote on every single thing. That was my goal. And it still wouldn't solve the problem, but it would minimize. Now, we've gone back and we've made certain changes, but, at this point, we should finish it up and see where we stand. And, I understand any of the cuts are difficult. Every one of these is difficult. They get tougher as they go along. So in this one, do we have a vote, Maggie?
They voted...
To keep the status quo?
No, on this one, it was just Director Oskui, Director Gedney made the motion, seconded by Director Oskui to eliminate the program. It failed to pass.
Okay.
So at this point, it stays as is.
Another easy one for the district to consider. We have car allowances for the general manager and the directors here. The total cost for all the car allowances is approximately $30,000. While they're traditional in Southern California, they're not traditional statewide. There are many districts that don't have them for either. There was a
And there are
recommendation.
many that do.
And many that do, I already said. There was a recommendation in the audit.
Yeah.
The only one that we did fully implement, that we go to a mileage situation. The board chose to reduce at that time by a third the car allowance, and it was a gesture at the time. So we've now dealt with 31 and a half out of the 32 audit things. So this is something that has been commented on, like I said, in the audit by the retail agencies, by the directors. So the proposal here is to eliminate and replace it with mileage. You'd have a savings of about $20,000 because there would be mileage put in, and my estimate on that would be that out of the $30,000, you'd pick up another $10,000 of mileage, so the net savings would be $20,000. You can reduce as the board deem appropriate, so you can maintain the status quo.
So Kevin, you're suggesting that the board did not follow the recommendation of the audit?
No, the board had discretion on each audit matter. And by the way, I think
What was the recommendation of the audit?
the audit recommended that we do away with car allowances and that we'd go to mileage.
Okay.
But again, that was their recommendation. We analyzed it at the time. It is not the standard of practice what districts
I
are like in
understand
this
that,
area.
but I wanted to know what was the recommendation of the audit.
And by the way, even though that's the only thing that we did not fully comply with in the audit, we still have a higher percentages of compliance than they've ever seen, is the way I've heard it.
That's all beautiful.
It is beautiful.
Yeah. With that, I move that we adopt option one.
I second the motion.
Before we do that, we had this where we did the mileage. It took a full-time staffer to do all this, and that's not calculated in any of this because each one of us had to turn in our receipts and our mileage, and we had to go over it with that staffer, and that's why we went to the lump sum, because it was actually more expensive to do it that way. Right? That's why I rejected it when the audit came out.
No, Maggie has expressed concerns about the admin burden of, 9 people's mileage being submitted. We'll come up with forms to make it easy for you. And these days, there's some tools in terms of when you plan your trips that you can get your mileage exact and stuff, but there's ways to minimize the impact, but that's a concern.
So right now we have a first by Director Oskui to eliminate place with mileage, seconded by Director Gedney. Call for the vote. President,
Are we calling for the vote?
are we okay to call
Any
for
other
the vote?
comments?
I do want to make a comment. The car allowance was reduced,
Yes.
right? From how much to how much?
From approximately 600 to approximately 400.
400.
Actually, 597 to 397.
Okay. And when was that done?
A year.
That in March 2016.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, are some of the surrounding water agencies, what does West Basin do?
West Basin does a car allowance when they're doing tax.
Do you know how much that is?
Yes.
It's the same.
West Basin is 411. At the time that we did, the survey was around the beginning of 2016.
What
at the time.
Okay, what about WRD?
WRD is 308.
Okay, and what about Upper San Gabriel?
335.
335. Okay, and what about some of the city councils? What about the City of Commerce? What does their council do?
I believe that's about 500.
About 500?
That's correct.
What about some of the other councils in the Central Basin Service area? What about Downey? How do they do it?
I don't have any information on that.
Yeah.
County is mileage. Any of these agencies that...
For their elected officials?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Director
What
Vasquez
about Lakewood?
mentioned.
May I add something that with regard to other metropolitan member water agencies, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 that do mileage reimbursement.
Right.
Out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 agencies. So 8 out of the 11 metropolitan water districts that are similar to us in fire tax function do the mileage reimbursement.
Thank you. And also, the point that I wanted to make, any of these agencies, the WRD, Upper San Gabriel, or West Basin, are they facing the same financial woes that we have
I know that
right now?
West Basin and WRD are AAA rated right now, I believe.
Right. So they are not dealing with cutting $5,000 from here or $2,000 from there, or eliminating their bottled water programs or those kind of things. They are not talking about any of that stuff, are they?
No.
Okay.
And again, I appreciate all the comments and discussion today. I think it's a good thing. I would just observe at the Metropolitan Water District Committee meeting this week, that both Director Vasquez and I attended, we made a proposal based upon population. And the reason we made that proposal as opposed to assessed valuation was because of our population base. So I don't necessarily concur that we should be comparing ourselves to other districts who are in great financial shape and condition when we are making an alternate proposal in terms of representation at the Met Board. This was brought up and observed by a number of other agencies during the committee meeting. Our strongest proposal has been the population group that we serve, our people, and the fact that we serve 1.6 million people, and here we are faced with a deficit. I think we need to go beyond a little bit, kind of the standard operating procedure of looking at other very well off, for the time being, agencies, and using that as a model to copy. So I would recommend we go to a kind of a standard procedure, and I know why the audit did this, because that's how state employees get compensated for using their cars. So that's why I seconded this motion.
We have a motion and a second.
Director Chacon?
To do away with it or anything like
To
that?
eliminate
No.
and replace it with
No.
mileage.
No.
Director Gedney?
Yes.
Director Hawkins?
No.
Director Oscui?
Yes.
Director Vasquez?
No?
Director Aceituno?
Abstain.
President Apodaca?
No.
You have 4 noes, 2 yeses, and 1 abstain, 1 absent.
So there's no, the motion doesn't pass because it's not 5 noes? Or,
It's 5 noes.
oh, there is 5 noes?
There's 4 noes,
Okay.
4 noes.
But again,
There's 2 yeses.
4 noes, 1
One abstain.
abstention, right?
so are we,
abstention.
our quorum on our board is 5, I believe.
Right. So that motion fails. That would be appropriate for another motion to be made.
Is there an alternative motion that someone would like to make?
I make a motion that we stay with the status quo.
Director Chacon?
Yes.
Director Gedney?
motion is to stay the
With
same?
status quo.
I vote no.
Director Hawkins?
Yes.
Director Oscui?
No.
Director Vasquez?
Yes?
Director Aceituno?
Abstain.
President Apodaca?
Yes.
We're back in the same.
Okay, so nothing, let's just move on. So nothing happens with this, it stays as it is, right? Unless anybody has another motion they'd like to make? No? Okay. Okay, here's one we can all agree on. We have had for years a ministerial duty to contribute to the San Gabriel River Water Master. We are not technically involved in the actions of it or the impacts of it. It really impacts WRD. It's a legacy role that we fulfill. It costs us, we pay 41.2% of it. It costs us $83,000 a year. The motion is to, assuming both boards in the court agree to transfer this to WRD going forward. Yes, sir.
I tried to get out of this about 5 years ago, and they said we couldn't. Are you sure we can?
We have to, we just, Ted Johnson of WRD is handling this for them, and they've contacted to see what we have to do, and we have some paperwork we have to do to show that it's better served by being in WRD than being in our hands, because it's more germane to what they do. And once we get them the letters like that, they believe it'll be approved. But there's a process we have to go through. I think
So-
it's Attorney Bill Cruz has given that.
Does that also mean that because my understanding is that we get to appoint a water master, right?
We do, we have,
Right.
is that Dick Rohn represents us now, I believe.
So that means that we won't do that?
Right, yeah.
Okay.
So
What's the impact on the budget for this?
we save $83,000 if everything goes through.
Yeah, this issue, I really would like to look at it more carefully. What is the water master? What are the benefits of the Central Basin being able to nominate a water master? I would like to learn more about
We
that.
have, again, Director, we have discussed this in committees before. I don't know if you're present, and we've also, it has absolutely no impact on this district. We appoint someone when, I don't even think we talk to Mr. Rohn twice a year. And certainly doesn't consult us on any votes. It is a ministerial thing, as Director Hawkins said. We tried to get rid of it once before. But again, it's up to the board to make a motion to do something here.
So if this is unnecessary, then why do we even have a water master?
The water master performs a function, just not for us. They measure the flows and the allocation of the flows between the upper district and the lower district, and that has to do with the groundwater flows, which we're not a party of right now.
So the Central Basin, there's no benefit for us having a water master?
No, we're
So
not.
why don't we just recommend that the water master be eliminated?
You can't do that.
The water master exists pursuant to a court judgment.
Okay.
And as the general manager has indicated, this would require a court hearing in which the judge acknowledges the change in the judgment going forward. Those judgments go on forever.
Okay. Excuse my lack of information. Professionally, I'm an educator. I'm not a water person.
Right.
And so I don't speak,
I'm learning by
from an
osmosis,
expert
no pun
position. So, it may sound a little, well, why is she even asking about that? I just feel that, I have to ask because even though it may be a foolish question, I need to know what role this person plays, how important they are, and whether or not there's a benefit for Central Basin maintaining the right to appoint a water master.
I understand, Director. It's not a foolish
So
question.
I'm just trying to make the best decision
No, it is. It's
for
a
the
good question.
constituents that I represent.
Yeah, and my point is, it is absolutely, and Maggie, I don't know if Kevin Monty is here, but it absolutely, Maggie, tell me, it is absolutely of no benefit. It benefits the basin people. It benefits the allocation of waters between the upper lower basin and affect the groundwater basin. And they have a whole complicated system, management of groundwater through WRD and the water master down there and everything. It's a more appropriate role for them, technically, than for us. It's not like it's an MWD role. It's simply a role that we inherited on a legacy when we were formed. Compton and Long Beach, as member agents, are also in this, and they're in the same boat. They would like to have WRD take it over also.
generally water wholesalers are not water masters, correct?
Yeah, generally we're not.
So it's, other than a legacy issue, we shouldn't be in the business of doing that. WRD is also the water master for Central Basin.
Yeah, for the Central Basin itself, they are pursuant to some negotiations.
So
used to
it
be.
makes natural sense for WRD to assume this role as well.
Yeah.
Kevin, how long would this take I should be surprised that it costs more than attorneys, but Bill's sitting here right next to me.
No, but-
How long would it take, if we approve this today, how long would it take for this?
Well,
to
we've
go into effect?
contacted WRD, they've gotten the press, it has to go to their board, hopefully we'll have it done by June for next year's budget, that's the goal.
Okay, well,
And if not, I'll try and negotiate a deal with WRD that they'll reimburse us as we go forward or something.
I move the recommended action.
Second that.
Director Chacon?
Ms. Vasquez, do you need more time?
Yeah, I would like to look into it a little more and just learn more about what their role is. And I have gone out with Dick Rohn, and he's shown me a little bit about what his responsibilities are. So I would like to bring this item back in the future.
All right.
We have a motion and a second, right? Yep.
Yeah, so the question is you vote yes or no.
Okay.
You know what, right now I'm going to vote no.
Director Gedney?
Yes.
Director Hawkins?
Yes.
Director
Osculi?
Yes.
Director Vasquez?
I guess yes.
Director Aceituno?
Yes.
President Apodaca?
Yes.
What is going to be the impact? How much are we going to save
$83,000.
annually?
Yes.
Yep, this is kind of stuff.
And it goes up each year. I mean, it's an escalating thing. Okay.
Maggie, I'd like to change my vote to a yes.
Yeah. Actually, my understanding is that I will make the motion for him, is that in order for him to do that, he has to make a request for reconsideration, just so that we can follow appropriate protocol, because I know that we haven't done it in the past. So I would like to initiate, is that something?
Oh,
that
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he wants to request reconsideration.
Is that required?
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm sorry, what was?
Director Vasquez believes we have to get a motion for reconsideration so Director Chacon can legally change his vote.
Well, actually, you should vote on that, and one of the things we need to address in the future is all discussion should occur before the vote is taken.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So at this point, Director Chacon has indicated that he wants to change his vote from a no to a yes. Do you require?
Yes, I would suggest that the board vote on to whether to allow that to occur on this occasion, and I'll remind the board that in the future, discussion should occur on a motion before you vote, not after.
Okay, let me ask you another thing. Did it pass?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, then I'll leave my vote the same.
Okay, that saves it.
But just for the sake of
Rules of
protocol.
order, in the state, in the Sacramento Capitol, you are allowed to change your vote as long as it's in the same day before 5 o'clock of the closing hours, as long as it does not change the outcome of the
They
vote.
operate under totally different procedures.
Isn't that Robert's Rules of Order?
Robert's Rules of Order is only a procedural aspect. It's not necessarily the way you conduct a public board meeting.
Okay, I thought we operated under that.
Okay. That's interesting. All right, so we're,
That did not conform to the Ralph M. Brown Act, which is what you're acting under here.
okay.
Are we next to the next item?
Next item, please. Yeah, okay, next item is, we have what's HRE stand for?
Reimbursement account.
Health reimbursement account that we provide to all employees, retirees, and directors. It provides for reimbursement of eligible out-of-pocket expenses. We have a very rich plan. It provides $4,000 per employee, an additional $4,000 if they have a spouse, an additional $4,000, total up to $12,000 if you have a family. Funds not used in any plan year right now may roll over to the next year. So we have 40 participants in this plan. Our total theoretical cost for this then could be $120,000. We added up kind of who is in which category. Our actual budgeted amount for this year was $166,000. Our actual expenditures last year, $133,000. The options for this, the board may modify in any way this program. It is a fairly rich benefit program. One of the options is to reduce the benefit level to $3,000 for all participants, irrespective of number of dependents, and eliminate the option of rolling over the funds. That would save us $46,000 a year, or about, $1,100 per employee. 40 people into that, it's about $1,000 roughly per participant in the plan. The board could determine another benefit level, or they can maintain the status quo.
I'll make a motion for status quo.
I'll second that.
Any further questions by the board?
Yes, I'm sure that Dana has done her research. What are some of the comparables, since we are into comparable studies, other agencies doing?
Yes, so I did a survey late last year.
Is there a motion on the floor?
15 water district agencies, metropolitan water agencies, and found that aside from Central Basin, only 4 other agencies have the HRA. And those were 3 Valleys that offers $1,000, irrespective of you have dependents or not. Upper San Gabriel that offers $2,500, irrespective of whether you have dependents or not. West Basin and WRD have similar benefits like Central Basin currently does.
And it is all of these are offered to the directors as well, or the board members?
That is correct, and to retirees.
To retirees as well. One of your concerns is containing the cost of OPEB, right?
That is correct, yes. Changing this benefit would change the cost of OPEB in theory.
Yes. Thank you.
Any further questions? Director Chacon?
Yes.
Director Gedney? Director Hawkins?
Yes.
Director Oscui?
No.
Director Vasquez?
Yes.
Director Aceituno?
Abstain.
President Apodaca?
Yes.
You have 4 yeses, 2 nos, 1 abstain
That was for the status quo.
for the status quo.
Okay, and actually, if there's no action, the status quo stays. Can there be a substitute motion at this time? No director has one, let's move on. Is this our last item?
Yes, sir.
Good. Okay. Right now, we have all of our employees are in the CalPERS program. They're in 3 different programs. The newer employees, like myself, are in what's called PEPRA, based on a new legislation that passed in 2013, and we pay 6.5% of our salaries for retirement benefits. The rest is picked up by the district. We also have people in the 2% of 55 Classic and in the 3% at 60 Classic. The proposal here is that all employees contribute toward the retirement, but that it be done over a 3-year phasing program, 2% the first year, then 4% the second, and 6.5% total on the third. By that time, it will save $84,000 per year going forward. And the language is, so if there are any questions about what is involved in it, and this strictly affects the employees, it does not affect the directors.
What do the employees think about this? Because this will be affecting them.
Yes, I don't know any of them that are in favor of it. It's kind of like with the member agencies. Much of what I'm talking about today is not popular. So it's not popular with the directors to ask them to cut something. It's not popular with the agencies, and it's not popular with the staff. So, yeah. But my dog still likes me, so I don't mind. So no, the employees are not in favor of it.
I guess kind of reflecting back on what we've asked, how do we compare to other agencies within the Met Service area? How does this look? Where are we at in the pack?
Kind of suspected you would be asking this question as well.
John prompted me.
Back in July 2017, we did another survey. We looked at, again, agencies our size. We looked at 9 agencies. What we found is that 4 agencies had the employees pay their cost for contributions, or were in the process of ultimately having the employees pay the EPMC. And we found that 3 of the agencies had still the employers pay the EPMC like we currently have for our classic members. One of them didn't respond, so that was undetermined. So overall, there's been a trend at the city level, at the public level, all agencies looking towards having more employees pay into their portion. And that we see it across the board.
My understanding is that there was a law that was passed at the state level that basically required these public agencies, from cities to special districts to counties, for all the new employees to assume these costs. So we're already doing that, right?
That is correct, yes, and that's
Right, yeah. I know that I've had this discussion with Kevin. I've looked at the benefits packages for all of the agencies surrounding us, and I really feel, and I've been a public sector employee, and I've also been a private sector employee. And I feel very strongly about having a strong benefits plan for public sector employees. I think there's a reason why people come and work for the public sector, and it's certainly not for the huge salaries that the public sector pays out. It's because of the benefits packages that are put together. And I feel that we have a responsibility to retain and attract highly qualified staff members. And I feel that one of the ways that we are competitive is by providing the benefits that we provide through this program, and that we also provide through the HRA program that we talked about a little while ago. And so I don't support cutting making these cuts. I believe that our staff members have made a tremendous amount of sacrifice already over the past 5 years, not just the past 1 year, but the past 5 years. Those are my feelings about this.
And a motion, Ms. Vasquez?
What are the options? So I guess the motion would be to maintain the status quo.
I'll second that, if that's a motion.
Before we take a vote on it, Mr. President.
Yes.
As Dana mentioned, since Petro and prior to that, because of the market crash, a number of agencies have to come up with ways of saving money. And it is a trend. Cost sharing, the particular employee that I have, we instituted cost sharing and different classes, different tiers in 2012. And one of the areas that cost sharing is being encouraged is exactly the EPMC portion of it, because of the duplication of calculation in your retirement benefits. So under normal circumstances, and I have been on the record supporting the employees all along, but under normal circumstances, I would have supported the consideration of changes to the benefits of the employees. But in good conscience, I cannot do that when we are not considering an elimination of a bottled water program for 1 year for a cost of $150,000, and we are not even considering going to a per mileage car allowance for saving potentially $24,000. So because of those reasons, I would not support the recommendation.
Call for the question.
Call for the question.
Director Chacon?
Yes.
Director Gedney?
No.
Director Hawkins?
Yes.
Director Oscui?
Yes.
Director Vasquez?
Yes?
Director Aceituno?
Yes.
President Apodaca?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, so based on this, we have completed going through the 10 items that the board direction was requested on. Do we have a summary of the, can you pull that up? Just 1 second, we'll pull up the summary of what actions we took today, if any.
While we're doing that, I would still like to see a visual chart of what we accomplished today, what
Right, yeah.
proposals, because I think that's going to, I think we need to work this thing from both ends, as far as the cuts and as far as what the raise is going to be, so that we know where we're going on all this.
Yeah.
Because we did this as individual standalone items, and I'm not sure that's exactly the way to do it. I think we need to see the overall picture as we do all of this.
Yeah. And I will try and get you better presentation after the board meeting on the 22nd. But I think you're right. There's got to be a better way to present what we've done in terms of reductions in budget. And again, it's an interesting process while they're going through this. Where we can reduce the budget, we do, but other things happen that tend to increase it. And you know, the downgrade on a bond, all of a sudden you get another 100-some-odd thousand. Budgets are a dynamic thing, so.
Well, the other thing is I think this board needs to have a guesstimate of what's going to happen this year up to the next 5 years. Are we going to be going down in sales, or are we going to be going up in sales? Because what we're doing right now is going to make a difference on every one of those. Do we want to go through this all over again for the next 5 years?
Yeah, and we do have that projection, and I think we have them, we'll bring them to you, but our potable water sales are going down from 18 to 14 over the next 5 years. Our recycled water sales are going up slowly but steadily, and possibly with a couple of big jumps. Our replenishment sales are totally unpredictable now. The GRIP project will come online by next December. Mother Nature's hydrology will determine how much replenished water they buy after that, and the reliability of that project. So those sources of revenue, we know our standby charge is going to generate $3.3 million a year, but the other ones are, you know, we know they're going down. And the problem we have, again, is that, and we have the total of what the costs will be done today. So with the actions the board's taken today, out of a total potential of 600 and some odd thousand, you've approved 234,000.
And that 200,000 could potentially be offset in February by the increasing cost of the letter of credit and the credit rating.
Yeah. Our new protected shortfall is about 1.98 million, or it's still roughly $2 million.
$2 million, and that amount is going to increase next year, right? If we don't do anything.
Yeah. Now we have, and again, in the budgeting process, we have contracts that ends, things that, we have other potential things. We go back to the list of studies that are underway that will affect it. But and as you mentioned, Director, early on, part of this is optics. A lot of what was teed up here was not a big thing. We shouldn't be arguing about a $5,000 or $8,000 thing, but I think the retail agencies deserve to know that we have looked under every stone and every single thing that we could do. So.
And I believe we have, Kevin, and I think it's important for us to take a look at all the cuts that have been made over a longer period of time, not just a year ago. We have made tremendous strides, and we've made a number of cuts, and I would like to really work with the finance director to get down to what that number has been over the past 5 years.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, we can show whatever we have saved, but the bottom line is that we're going to be short $2 million. Dan, I'm sorry to put you on this position again. What is the cost increase for the next 3 years for PERS?
We're looking at, total cost would be, including the UAL, which is the unfunded accrued liability that we pay annually at the start of the year, as well as the normal cost that goes to payroll. For 2018-19 fiscal year 19, excuse me, the $700,000. And we go to other years.
That doesn't sound right, Tina.
That includes the normal, just not the.
That's not the cost increase.
That's
what
total amount.
That's what we have to pay.
Yes.
And then, well, how much are we paying right now? The increase is going to be a couple. Maybe Andrew has an answer, right?
And 600,000 we're paying now, so it's about a change of 100,000.
100,000 next year, but it's going to go because the peak is going to be in 2 years from now, right?
Correct.
So that's going to add probably another 300,000 or so.
Yeah.
So that number, Director Hawkins, is going to increase because our costs of PERS are going to increase.
Sorry, say that one more time.
I'm sorry. The deficit that we're going to be looking at under best case scenario, all things being equal today, it's going to increase by $300,000 in about a couple of years.
See, that's
Andrew,
what
I'm sorry.
something like that, I think we need to look at this year so that we don't have the same thing year after year and figure out how to solve the problem as best we can.
Well, I don't, sorry, I'm trying to do your job. I don't think that our sales are going to increase in potable water area as much. We all know that. But
We said they're going down.
We started going down.
They will go down to 14.
Recycled water, we just talked about it.
It's going to go up gradually.
Gradually, but it's going to take a while for us to get there. And the replenishment water, we cannot count on. So our revenue sources are not going to change, but our costs are going to go up.
Right.
And the biggest contributor is going to be PERS.
Right.
We know that.
Right. And that's why Kevin has mentioned that he's going to bring back to us the different ways that we can generate revenue, including the connection fee increase, right?
Yeah, well, I'm certainly, and I believe I told it to you last month, as long as I'm here until we approve it, or until someone comes up with another way to do it, I feel morally obligated to bring you that connection charge, because it's the only way we're going to get a balanced budget out of here.
I'm sorry, I've characterized this as an emergency and dire times. So for me to be able to frame it in my own mind, for all intents and purposes, let's assume that we will not be able to impose a fee this year. Let's just assume that, for whatever reason. What is going to be the outcome of that?
There are two ways I can approach it. I can give you a budget where we pull money out of reserves, which doesn't meet our bond covenants, but we reduce, and we'll do that, and then the last penny spent, we'll close the doors or do whatever you have to do. But that is not... you have a contract for your bond covenants that says you're supposed to generate a certain amount of revenue in a certain way. You'll continue to get downgraded. Your bonds will go to B and become junk bonds, and your costs will skyrocket. So it's not a prudent way to do it.
Right.
The other thing I do is a draconian, what's the district look like? And I will guarantee you, if you thought the cuts proposed here are uncomfortable for you, if I have to come here with a budget that says I've got to cut $2 million, could you pull up the slide that shows our amount of our budget that's fixed? We put this together just in case this came up. This is, and this I want to make discussion, when I say that 8.5 million out of our budget the next several years is fixed. These are the items that's uncovered. Our bonds, that's principal and interest. The recycled water operations. The capital program that we have to do, because the pension costs that we talked about, and there's the number you were asking for that increase on it. The legal fees, you have to have an attorney. You may be able to cut them down, as Director Grady, if he was here, would vociferously say, but you're still going to have legal costs coming. The retirees' costs are fixed. The insurance costs. IT, you have to have a system that's working and operating. Utilities for the building and for others. The building cost itself. The county, that's the charge to implement the standby charge. Now, that's not discussed, that we get $3 million for doing that. The water master fee that we voted today, so that might go away. And OPEB, funding for OPEB, I guess you can choose not to fund that if you choose not to, and your liability will increase over time. So out of that 8.5, you can't even argue about 8.3 million of it. It's fixed cost. We're talking about a total budget of 12.8 million.
I'm sorry, I know these are uncomfortable questions, but I'd rather ask them now
Yeah, no,
than later.
yeah. So what I'm left with is, the reason I put it, you take the 12.8 and you subtract from it the, call it 8.5 to at least 4.3 million that we're doing cuts out of. And I have to cut 2 million out of 4.3. I can guarantee you it won't be a comfortable discussion, because I can't see, if I've got to cut bodies at that time, which means we can't perform our duties. We're at a minimum staffing right now. We have cut 3 full-time positions and 2 part-time positions. And by the way of it, one of the things that, again, I'm on a high horse for a bit now because I take this very, very personally. You mentioned that the purveyors don't necessarily trust our budget numbers, et cetera. We have done the utmost to give them every piece of information that was available, and they have all the information. I have offered to sit down with any one of them and go through it in detail at any time. We've presented it in detail, we've gone through it in detail, and we've done that not just this time, since the day I've got here. It's been a very open book. There's nothing hidden in the way we approach it. I've asked them for suggestions. One of them is in there, for example, someone suggests maybe we could change our hours. In the miscellaneous 5,000, we're looking at a 980. That might save $2,500 a year. There are things that we can do to the extent possible, but I don't think there's any hidden silver bullet. I mean,
You're absolutely correct. And Kevin, let me clarify. Perhaps I didn't do a good job. I was just relaying what I'd heard from.
Yeah, I understand. I understand.
Doesn't mean necessarily that they do not trust what the staff is doing. Follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They do not trust that we as a body collectively are doing everything that needs to be done in order to cut costs before going in front of them and asking for more money. That's generally what...
And I also think, in fairness to the directors, because what happened today, and I didn't want it to happen, I've tried to avoid it since we did it, it became an appointed versus elected director issue.
No, I don't think so. I think it's forgive me for saying this, I think it's making the right decision and the wrong decision. That's all.
No, that's maybe where you look, but the bottom line is, if we prevailed on every recommendation to cut that was given to it would not have changed the...
We all had the same choices. You explained it, and it was in front of us. We had to make a decision. We all did.
But if we made it differently, if everything we put in all together, it would reduce the cost, the director of stuff, by $100,000.
Yeah.
It's not going to solve the problem. We need something much more structural to solve the problem.
You've already said that, yeah.
Let me, if I may, interject a comment from a person that's been here 18 years and is elected by the people. The people trust me. I hope they trust my colleagues. But we have differences, and we just got to respect those differences. You know, I understand who you work for, I understand who you work for. And I say this so that we try to get along. And generally, I would interject, but I don't want to aggravate you, so I just keep my mouth shut. I'm just saying there are differences. Whether we can get them all together, for sure, only time will tell.
Okay, so in closing, the only thing I will say, I was hoping to put out a press release. I don't think we have enough here to put out a press release. That's my sentiment on it. So, any other questions by the board? So, in summary, we will try and present the information more clearly when we go to the board to discuss the fixed fee on the 22nd in terms of the need and the financial picture and the options that are available. But,
Will we be getting that table that was displayed? I'd like to get a copy of that. And
yeah.
Okay.
And also, as of right now, this week, we have the Purveyor Workshop scheduled on Wednesday, and Director Escudero is hosting a meeting of the cities on Thursday.
Right. Mr. President, I appreciate the comment that you made. With all due respect, let me just clarify, because I see some folks in the audience sitting that I have not seen them in the past. Although I have a day job, and I know who I work for, but when I'm here, I represent the people that elected me to be their representatives to make the right decisions. Thank you.
I would just very briefly echo that. In addition to that, I also represent my customers, and I was appointed to the Met Board. At the Met Board, I represent all of the customers of this district. And so I make no distinction of appointed versus elected versus what have you. I represent 1.6 million customers, at the Metropolitan Board. So I recognize that we're all trying to get along here, but I will just reiterate, we are in very difficult times, and we're going to have to, in my opinion, make as many sacrifices as we can in an attempt to try and get to a point where we can continue the mission of Central Basin. It may be a difference of opinion what that mission ultimately is, but I think we're all united that we need to have a mission as Central Basin Water District.
I'd like to make a comment. I'd just like to thank our president for standing firm, making the right decisions, and may we continue to go forward making these right decisions.
And I would like to say one last thing. I'd like to thank all the directors for their work today. It was not easy, but you've handled it very professionally. You can go down and look at the tape of this meeting and see that every comment that was made, everybody think nothing was personal. It was all professionally done. I commend you all. Thank you.
Thank you.